So this week we've had yet another controversy, right? There's always some type of controversy that's going on out there, and I tend to shy away from them for this reason, simply because it's been talked to death. By the time I get this podcast going, people have shared so many viral moments, so many perspectives, especially if it deals with celebrities or something that's on the big stage. It's been talked about to death. And who needs my little voice to come out and say something else about it? It's not a whole lot new that anybody could say, but I want to look at this week's controversy, this past week's controversy, from a different perspective. And I hope you'll come along with me. All right. So we're going to talk about introspection, and we're going to talk about it um, in line with what occurred between the UConn women's basketball coach Geno and the University of South Carolina's women's basketball coach Dawn Staley. All right, so come along with me for this one. All right, so let me first confess, I am not a big basketball fan. I do not watch it that often. I know all you basketball fans are already giving me the thumbs down, right? Hey, football's my game. I'm sorry. I love it, college and pro. But I will watch basketball. Usually at this time, though, when it comes to college ball, I'll look men's and women's during March Madness because it's an exciting time, right? And I want to just get straight to the heart of the matter. Who's in the championship? Let's go. In this instance, you all know by this time, I'm sure, what happened between Geno and Dawn. We don't necessarily know, as far as I can tell, because I got to tell you, I haven't watched it that closely, but it's just flooded my Facebook and Instagram with all of the different angles of what happened when they got on the court and supposedly were shaking hands. I don't know. We don't know, as far as I know, what was said by Geno to Dawn. Okay, we just saw Dawn's reaction. And even though I saw lots of angles, you know, it would be up to them to tell us exactly what went on. I think Geno said something to the effect that he had been waiting for Dawn for about 3 minutes to shake her hand after the game or something like that. But there's other video evidence that shows she came up and shook hands with him and his staff prior to the game, as she's been known to do anyway. And we did see her walk up to him afterwards with her hand outstretched, and she put her hand on his upper arm, which goes to show she was shaking his hand after the game. Otherwise, they would never have had that negative interaction, right? So something, I don't get all the ins and outs of that. It doesn't matter to me anyway, because what I want to talk about is the inability to practice emotional intelligence by some folks, to not challenge themselves, and to think introspectively enough about their own behavior. That's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about why things got so explosive and do a little bit of analysis around, and specifically Geno, and mostly because I'm not trying to take sides, even though I live here in South Carolina and I'm a big fan of the women's basketball team in this way, that I think they are outstanding performers, have been for years. Dawn Staley is just top tier. And so big ups to them in this. Now, UConn was not a slouch either. They were undefeated until they met South Carolina. I get it. And that hurts to have worked so hard throughout the course of the year to get to that particular spot and to lose as poorly as they did. And I'm sure there are all kinds of other complaints about what wasn't called and referee stuff and all of this other stuff I kind of been hearing about. That aside, I want to talk about management of emotions. I want to talk about introspection. I want to talk about how we behave in some of the most difficult times. So come along with me for that discussion. Sometimes in life, we've just got to understand that we're going to take an L. Everybody loses at something at some point. We lose arguments, we lose friendships, we lose opportunities, we lose a chance at a promotion, we lose running for a particular office, we lose our way. That's just a part of life. And in fact, if you think about it, we probably lose more than we win. But don't we as adults teach young children that very thing, that when you mess up, when you fall short, that you just pick yourself up because you're going to stumble, you're going to fall, and you just go back, you regroup, you figure out what you did wrong, and you come back bigger, stronger, better, wiser, right? Life teaches us many lessons because of our shortcomings, our shortfalls. All the times we don't make it teach us a lesson about how to get closer to where we want to be in terms of what winning looks like for us. So we're not going to always experience success. That's just a given in life. How you handle the defeat is what matters the most. And so, what this situation between Geno and Dawn teaches us is there is a right way and a wrong way to face defeat. And in this case, I think Geno lost. He got defeated twice. Not only did his team lose, but he lost in the court of public opinion. Now, of course, this is a viral moment. Everybody had a comment on it. I did not really see anyone who was in favor of Geno's behavior. And anybody who would be in favor of Geno's behavior is not looking at all sides because, of course, this was a big game that was televised. There are cameras everywhere, not only TV cameras, but people with their own cameras on their phones who were able to catch various angles of what we saw happen. And so when you look at facts versus opinions, regardless of what people's opinions are, the facts line up that Dawn was being very cordial towards him, and there was something he said to her that set her off, and things got very heated. Now, Dawn will say and has said in any interview she's had post game and that all of that hullabaloo that went on, that, people just get in sports, people get really intense, emotions run high. So you can expect a little of that. I get that too. But since it seems it was Geno who sparked the controversy that occurred between them, let's look at just his posture. Let's look at his facial expressions. Let's look at, even if we can't hear the words, what occurred. There was something that sparked the reaction in Dawn Staley that she looked like she was ready to fight. All right. And so, when you think about the way we react to stimuli that's negative, we have to challenge ourselves to ask ourselves some really tough questions in those moments. What's driving a lot of that? This is emotional intelligence. And we've talked about emotional intelligence on these podcasts before, but it's something we still have not yet been able to master. And people allow their emotions to come out first before they start thinking about what's happening in front of them. Now, when we act purely out of emotion, as I said to you in the past, we're likely to react wrong. And in that wrong reaction, we have generated something that might not be something we can take back or that we can repair. So the goal is to be thoughtful on the front end so that we don't react negatively. If I am going to be a coach, let's just say I'm a coach, I'm a winning coach, right? I'm accustomed to winning. And so there's a sense of pride that comes with that. My team is on point. We're getting all this great and positive press. Everybody's slapping me on the back, telling me how great I am. We have a long history of winning. I'm not used to tasting defeat, but I must always be prepared for it. Okay. It's not being negative to think about the possibility of not winning, because at some point, everybody's streak ends. There's always going to be somebody who will ultimately be better than you. Everybody will have their time at the top of the mountain. You can have it for many, many, many years, and then you see yourself on a decline. And so how will you react in moments like that? You have to be prepared for even that, especially when you are going in front of a group of people who have a particular opinion about you. Maybe you are the golden child in the moment. They love you. People have this view of you, especially these types, right? They become a little bit of a celebrity amongst the fans, because especially schools where people follow you, you have the alumni, you have the students, you have everybody that's following you because you're doing such a fantastic job. And then of course the press starts following you. So yeah, you start feeling yourself, you start feeling good. You feel like you can't be defeated. And that's the kind of attitude you should have. But along with that attitude should be humility. What if we don't win the championship game? What if we don't get past this immediate barrier to get to the championship game? How will I respond if we don't win? And so it's not to conjure up a whole bunch of excuses and blame somebody else, especially the winning team. If you lose, it's not to conjure up something that gives you the right to be offensive to that person. It's about owning your stuff and owning your feeling in the moment, because it's okay to feel disappointed when you're defeated. It's okay to feel angry and let down. And maybe you just are angry with yourself. Then make sure that anger stays inward and that you're not lashing out at other people. And that's what we have to do. This is why introspection is so incredibly important, especially if you are in a leadership position. You have to be fully prepared to lead through some of the most difficult times. It can't be, yeah, yeah, rah, 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 I'm the best there is, when everybody's, just singing your praises and you have reason to celebrate. But you have to also say, can I be a good leader when things aren't going my way? And what am I showing to the young people in this instance about what it is to win the right way and what it is to lose the right way? So, regardless of whatever was said between Dawn and Geno, one of the things, if I were to coach if I were to coach Geno, since I did see his facial expression, which was not one of, okay, yeah, I'm disappointed, but good job, coach, to Dawn. No, I saw him come up to her, and based on the angle that I saw, he was frustrated and he was, like loaded for bear, right? I think that's the term. Yeah. And so Dawn, when she walks up to him, looks like she's prepared to pat him on the shoulder, shake his hand. But within a split second, her entire demeanor changed and she was ready to fight. She too was loaded for bear. The whole thing could have ended poorly had there not been people to step in. Now, as adults, we have to recognize that, you know, at the end of the day, yeah, for them, it's a big deal. I mean, their jobs have a lot to do with, keeping those jobs, because schools want winning coaches. We've seen enough coaches get laid off when people lose, but these are two winning coaches. These people have done well. So that should not have been a threat. When it all boils down to it, it's just a matter of pride. So if I had to coach Geno, I'd ask him to sit with himself for a while and to be introspective and to ask some very tough questions of himself and be prepared to answer truthfully. And if he's not willing or able, I should say, to not be biased in those moments, then he should get somebody who can sit across from him and challenge him in his thinking. So, some of the questions that I would ask when you're going to do the real tough introspective work, you can't sugarcoat things. You can't come in, with let me make excuses for myself when I ask these questions. You have to look at the whole global perspective on this. And if you can't see beyond your own scope, then you need to bring somebody else in to have this conversation with you, because there is a lot more going on than what we see on the surface. So if I had to coach Geno about what questions to ask, the first question I would ask him to ask of himself is, why am I reacting this way? So yes, we just lost one of the biggest games in the season, and we were undefeated. And yes, it hurts like crazy. But why is my reaction to attack the opposing coach behind a handshake? And is it really about the handshake, or is there something more? What caused such a visceral response from me behind something as simple as a handshake? Now, if you want to dig deeper and peel away the layers, he might say something like, I found it disrespectful. Maybe he felt because he waited for 3 minutes for Dawn and she didn't show up, that was a personal affront to him. She was disrespecting him. Maybe he felt she was being arrogant in her win. But what was confusing to me, and like I say, I didn't watch all of I don't know how all of this stuff goes, but what seemed to be very confusing to me was the fact that she had already gone up to him after the game to shake his hand. Otherwise, the confrontation could not have happened, right? So evidently they're shaking hands. Is there somewhere else they're supposed to go, like in the middle of the court and do it? I don't know. I think I heard or read something about that. I don't know. But whether she was there or not, he had to curb his behavior in response to whether even if he thought she had done him wrong. All right. Because at the end of the day, coach, you are a coach. You're an influencer in some ways for your team. And you always, not always, but should often take the high road in instances like that. You lost the game by a large margin. It wasn't even like a buzzer beater. So, think about what else is driving this. Is it your pride that's now been crushed? Is it your ego that's now being deflated? And you're just not used to that because you're so used to winning that now that you're no longer the winner, you feel like you're in this loser column, even though I don't see people who make it to that high height as a loser. You didn't win that game, but it doesn't make, you failed in this moment, but that doesn't make you a failure. You lost in this moment, but that doesn't make you a loser. And that's what he needs to be able to convey to his team, because they're disappointed as well. And as the coach goes, so does the rest of the team. Same thing in the work world. As the leadership goes, so does the rest of the team. If I'm a manager or a supervisor, we lost a contract to a very important client, of a very important client, to our competitors. We lost a contract to our competitors. All of a sudden, if I'm in there acting out and blaming people and pointing fingers around why we lost rather than taking responsibility for it myself, I'm teaching them how to attack each other. I'm teaching them how to fall into, this crushing blow as a team. We implode rather than support. And that's not the way to lead through difficult times. This is a time to be a show of strength. It is also a time to show your weakness in that I'm hurt, I'm disappointed, I wanted more, just like I know you wanted more. But we just have to go back and figure out how to be better the next time. It's all right to feel the emotions you all are having right now, but we're going to lick our wounds and we're going to come back and we're going to be better than we ever were. That's a mature response. It's the kind of response that's needed in one of the most difficult times that these students and these players will ever face, as well as the fans. But you have to be a class act. And we did not see that displayed from Geno in this moment. Another question I would ask Coach Geno is to ask himself, why is it hard for me to admit that I'm wrong about this? Because he was still being very defensive afterwards when they were doing, their discussions with the press. You have the interviews after the games, and he had something that sounded more like an excuse rather than an explanation. And I think he could have worded some of the things differently and even owned that, that wasn't the best behavior. Now, he has since come out and admitted it, I guess, because of all of the backlash and how hard people came at him. If the majority of people saw this as poor behavior, then all of those people can't be wrong. All right. There's a certain behavior that should be expected of any winning coach, and especially any winning coach, but of any mature adult anyway. And that wasn't it. And he had to finally admit it himself. But rather than doing the work, sometimes we act out in the moment and we have time to step back and think about what we did. He had time to think about that even when he went into the locker room and to check in with his feelings and say, man, I'm feeling way crazy right now. Was that the best way for me to handle that situation with Dawn? What have I done? What's going to be the fallout from this? Was that the best and most appropriate way for me to handle this? Could I have done something different or better? Even if I don't feel like what went on the court was fair, how should I behave in that moment? We have to check in what's going on, have some situational awareness, have some self-awareness, have some self-regulation. All of those are emotional intelligence types of behaviors. And he failed on all fronts. All right. Am I being fair to the other side by not trying to see their point of view? Because there are some people, no matter what, they will dig their heels in. They can be so incredibly wrong. It does not matter to them. They don't care if you come with facts. They're going to state their opinions as if their opinions are facts. They're going to toss aside whatever your facts are. They will discredit your facts, even though they don't have any facts to back up what they're saying. We have video evidence of what occurred before the game and after the game, and they don't necessarily align with what the story is that Geno told. And yet there will be people who will try to side with him. They are definitely in the minority. I didn't see anybody like that, but there are people like that. They're just contrarians. And a lot of times they are just attention seeking. A lot of times they're just being stubborn. A lot of times they are people who can't admit their own wrongs. So, we just have to think about how we respond to difficult situations from all perspectives and ask ourselves, why am I acting this way? Not the other side, because you have no control over them, but why am I responding in this way? Is my ego getting in the way? Is it my pride that's been crushed? Are my spirits dampened because I've lost and I didn't handle that loss well? Doing introspective work without bias requires that you stop for a minute and take yourself outside of yourself. And then to ask these questions as if you are sitting across from you. Now, you have to be almost two people. This might sound a little schizo in a way, but you have to tap into, all right, I lost my race. All right, let's say I'm running for political office. I lost my race. And because I lost my race, I feel terrible about what happened. And you're tapping into your feelings. I feel disappointed. I feel um, like I've been treated unfairly. I feel like I've wasted time. I feel like I've wasted money. I feel like I've let my constituents down. I feel like I've let the people down who supported me. I feel like whatever the feelings are, right? You got to come up with I feel, I feel, I feel. Okay, so this is how you're feeling in the moment. Then you have to ask yourself, this is when you step outside of you and you're sitting on the other side of this conversation with you and you're saying, but why do you feel that way? All right. And so if you can come up with a why, you may say things like, well, I mean, I'm not used to losing, or I knew this was a long shot and I didn't really want to do it, but I allowed myself to get pushed into it. And now I'm facing the defeat that I knew I would. Or maybe I just don't like the feeling of losing. I feel a sense of shame about it. Whatever it is, you gotta tap into why you feel that way. And then you might ask yourself, sitting on the other side, well, how should you respond to this loss? Well, a loss is a loss. People lose all the time. Not everybody's going to win. I came into this knowing that there's an opportunity to win, and I also came into this knowing there's an opportunity to lose. And so I didn't do a good job of preparing myself for the loss side. Yes, I wanted to stay confident. I wanted to stay, above board in terms of making sure that everything I did was on point. People could see all the great things. I made a lot of promises. I said a lot of things out there. I took a lot of chances, and now none of that worked for me. Right. So you're having this whole, you know, getting in touch with why, the who, what, why of these kinds of difficult situations. And if you are not able to talk to yourself through things like that, I highly recommend you get a coach to help you through, somebody who you can trust, somebody who it would be even more helpful if it's somebody who can stay neutral, who they don't have a dog in the fight. They're not your best friend. They can be very frank with you, and it can, just kind of walk you through some of the most difficult parts of your own conversation. And then the other part of that, the hard part of that, is then you have to listen to them. You have to hear what they say and not fight them on it, but just to say without judgment of what they're saying to you, but only judging the situation and your behavior in that situation. And so back to the example of Geno and Dawn, to say, if I'm coaching Geno, to say, okay, so do you think your pride got in the way? Do you think that your behavior was becoming that of a winning coach? Was it really about Dawn not shaking your hand, or is there something else going on underneath? How do you recover from something like this? Yeah, I know you put the apology out there, but how do you come back from something like this so that people can trust you again and believe that you are composed in difficult situations, and that you're not making excuses? Because what he did, in my opinion, was weaken his leadership. He didn't seem the strong, confident, knowledgeable, skilled coach. He seemed like a kid who was having a tantrum because he didn't win the game. And that's the one thing we don't want. We have to make sure that we are creating in the minds of people what we want them to see in us. And if all people ever see from you is arguments and strife and complaints and finger pointing and contrarian views and gloating, I did a short on not gloating when your enemies fall, because everybody's enemy is going to fall. If a person is really dirty, if a person really isn't doing the right thing, there's a price to pay for that. You don't get to do dirt forever and never have consequences. Sometimes the consequences are immediate, sometimes they're a little ways down the road, sometimes they're years down the road, but you will have to pay at some point. We do not get rewarded for doing dirty. All right. So In instances like this, when you have a coach who's misbehaved and had hopefully just one bad moment, he can recover from it. But if this is a pattern of behavior, that pattern has to be stopped. And this is why we have to own who we are and how we are in certain moments and accept these things about ourselves so that we can change them. If you never accept where you fall short, then you will never find a way to change something that's in you that falls short because you haven't owned it yet. I can't get better as a leader if somebody comes to me and tells me, "Hey, Betty, I notice that every time we fall short as a team, you start pointing fingers at other people." If I say, "I don't do that, I don't do that," you're totally mistaken on that. The reason why I do what I do is because, and there I go, right? Making excuses, becoming defensive, not even seeing the defensiveness in myself. But if I stop for a minute and say, okay, well, tell me about this. I maybe I'm missing this in me. This might be a blind spot for me. But you're telling me I point fingers. I didn't realize I was doing that. Give me an example of when that happened. And then I need to listen without judgment. I have to listen to them tell me about what I said. I have to accept it as truth, especially if it is, and then maybe I got to do my own research and say, okay, this person brought this to my attention. Let me go check with two or three other people who I know have my best interest in mind. They're around me, they know me well, and I'm going to give them permission to give me the full truth about my behavior. And if you're starting to hear a theme from folks about you, then it's time to stop making excuses. It's time to stop averting the issue and say, yeah, I didn't see that happening in me, but now I can see by the common, you know, conversations, the common feedback that I'm hearing that I probably am doing those things. Shame on me for that. I didn't realize it. I have to do better. And then we start formulating a plan on how I can get better at that. So if I'm one who points fingers, I don't listen to people give me feedback. I have to make sure that the next time somebody says something I don't like about me, instead of getting defensive, I got to stop for a minute and say, oh, this is one of those times where I might become defensive. Now, what's my immediate thought here? I know how I'm feeling. I'm feeling defensive when I think about it. I want to push back on what they're saying, but maybe I shouldn't push back this time. Maybe I need to just really hear what they're saying. And then challenge yourself. Why do I feel like I do have to be defensive in this moment? Is what they're saying true? So why don't I just try to do better in this moment rather than tell them they're wrong and try to explain away what's going on? I don't need to justify everything. I don't have to excuse away everything. Sometimes I just have to accept a few things, right? So if that's the case, then I challenge you today to do this type of deep introspective work. Use this example of what happened between the two coaches as a catalyst for deeper thinking for yourself. It's going on all around us. Theirs was on full display, but it happens all the time. And we have to be willing to own those things about ourselves that are not up to par. I am a coach, been certified as a professional coach. If you feel like you need one, hey, give me a holler. I'm happy to talk to you about that. And in fact, I know this is YouTube, but on Facebook, I'm asking people to subscribe to my Facebook page because I'm going to be sharing content with people in the subscriber hub that I won't be sharing with everybody else because I want to make it much more personal. I want to go into depth about some things that I think they need to hear. I want people to have a place where they can feel that it's open enough for them to have a discussion without without all of the eyes that come from the bigger groups, being out there out in the community. But I want to make a difference in people's lives in terms of helping people become the very best that they can be. And so if you want to be a part of that, find me on Facebook under my name, Betty Parker, and subscribe. And we'll look forward to having some more meaningful conversations, but also share your comments and thoughts even here in the comments section. Thanks again for stopping by. I hope this was helpful to you all. And I hope you will share this podcast with others. And I look forward to the next topic we'll have with a wonderful guest I have on tap. And just stay tuned. Have a good week.